and welcome to the next edition of Housing 101 here from University Housing at Appalachian State University. My name is Dr. Alicia Vest. I have been in University Housing here at Appalachian for 15 years. I'm in my third or fourth position in this department, and yet I always am tagged to present policies, whether it be to our student staff, our new staff, and or to our students. So we are excited to talk to you about policies in and around the residence halls today. And I am joined by my colleague, Dr. Will Sheppard.
Hey everybody, like Dr. Alicia said, my name is Dr. Will Sheppard. I'm the Assistant Director for Housing for the West Side of campus. And I have been at App State for approximately 3 years. And so I get the privilege to present with her about a lot of things that we're going to talk about in the residence halls today.
All right, so really quick, I'm going to share my screen and show you where the information is that we're going to be talking about today. So if you missed something or you want to go read something a little bit more in depth and see each and every detail, we're going to show you how to do that. So I am going to share my screen with you briefly. So this is the University Housing web page, website. It's housing.appstate.edu. The easiest thing for you to do to find out about our policies is click on campus living, scroll on down to housing policies. And when you click that, you will see our housing policies. Our contract is there first. It's downloadable if you want to download a copy of that. And then each of the items that we're going to talk about today are highlighted here. And if you click on them, it'll go through all of the bullet points and details that we will be talking about. So I'm going to get us talking about the contract first. It's a pretty basic contract. Some things for students and families to understand about our housing license contract is that essentially is similar to what you would sign for an off-campus lease. All right. So it is not one of those pieces that you can sign up for on-campus housing, sign your lease, and then decide next week, oh, I think I'm going to live somewhere else instead. And so it's a little bit easier for our incoming first-year students because you are required to live on campus here at Appalachian, therefore you are guaranteed a space. For our continuing students after their first year, you're not guaranteed or required to live on campus after your first year. And so that can get a little confusing for students. Once they sign up for on-campus housing and sign their housing license contract, they are on lease for the following year. And so it's a great option for students who are maybe a little unsure of what they're going to do so far. So if a student is debating on, maybe they're going to transfer out of Appalachian, or they're going to graduate in December, or they might be studying abroad, we will work with you for some of those very specific academic reasons in order to enable you to sort of break that lease for those reasons. However, if you decide in March, after you've signed your housing license contract, that you've decided to get an apartment with friends off campus, that's great. You will be subject to our cancellation fees. After July 1, those fees become the entire fall semester. So we really work with students to let them know, here is what your contract means. This is what it means for you academically. This is what it means for you financially. And here is where you're bound by it. So we do work with students, especially for those academic reasons. We understand it's difficult to find a 6-month lease or a half-year lease off campus. So for students looking to study abroad, graduate in December, or going to student teach or have an internship outside of Watauga County, so oftentimes spring semester of their senior year, and we'll work with students to make sure that they do have somewhere to stay to finish up their classes. And then we'll have an opportunity to break that lease so that because they're going to be living somewhere else in January. That being said, the general student who signs their lease with University Housing is subject to stay with us for the entire academic year. So that means August through May. That's where May comes into play. And so students don't get the opportunity to simply sign an off-campus lease starting in January because they've decided they want to move off campus at that point. So this is an important distinction for students to recognize and be aware of. So unless they meet one of those guidelines where maybe they're having, a winter wedding and getting married, that might be a reason for a release from contract in December. But otherwise, our students should expect to live with us generally from August through May when the academic year ends. So those are some of the basics of the contract. The other thing the contract talks about is that, one, you're only contracted for your space. And so if you are assigned to a double occupancy space, which almost our entire inventory is, which means 2 students share a bedroom, you only get a say in and oversight over your bed space. So if your roommate moves out, maybe their best friend from home has come to App and they have an opening in their space and they moved over there, or moved down the hall, or maybe you decided that maybe you're going to change rooms. You don't get to say, no, I don't want this person to move in. And so we do make sure students are aware if somebody moves out of your space, it is your responsibility to keep that empty space ready, clean, and available for a new student to move in at any time. So there's lots of questions about that throughout the year, and we work with students and families on an individual basis for what their questions are, what they're looking for, and how best to fill that space. But we like students to know that now. Just because somebody moves out does not mean it's time to push the beds together and redecorate and make this into a space just for you, because you might get a new roommate that you were not expecting. And so we do encourage sort of that cleanliness ready for other people in there. We don't get a lot of contract questions. Our contracts, if students are under the age of 18, are also signed by a parent guardian. And so they are a legally binding contract. So we ask you to read through all those minute details, but for the most part, it's a pretty standard contract. If you have specific questions, you can reach out to me directly, or reach out to us at housing@appstate.edu from an email standpoint if you have specific questions on the contract. More importantly are some of the common policies. So we are going to talk mostly today about the policies, what you can bring, what you shouldn't bring, and then Will is going to spend a lot of time talking more about behavior and what does it mean to live in community living. So I'm not going to read all of those bulleted lists that I showed you, but I am going to hit some high points and some things that typically people have questions about. First thing is really covered under sort of the appliances policy. One, we don't allow appliances over 1200 watts. And so some of those really big appliances people might want to bring to campus, unfortunately, based on our halls, how they're built and what they're made for, cannot handle that electrical load. One of the pieces on that list is air conditioners. We will have 5 residence halls still open this fall that do not have air conditioning. And I know that's a big deal for some people, especially if you've never lived in the mountains before. For us, it's pretty standard. Many of our homes don't have air conditioning. I just got my air conditioning in my house about 3 years ago, and it wasn't really something we ever noticed or needed. So we do say, students may want to bring fans for the first couple weeks and get a cross breeze going if they're assigned to one of those 5 halls. But you cannot bring your own air conditioner, even if it is standalone or a window unit. So we like to put that out there. Will is going to talk a little bit about our expectations in terms of alcohol use, but regardless of whether you consume the alcohol or not, we don't allow alcohol beverage container collections, right? So if you have a champagne bottle or a wine bottle from somebody's wedding or an event that was important to you, even if it has no alcohol in it, it is not something that you should have in the residence halls. Talked a little bit about appliances. The other big piece we look at when it comes to appliances are open heating elements. That does include coffee pots that have that hot plate on the bottom, hot plates themselves, George Foreman grills. There used to be a pizza pizzazz item that was out there that was really popular for a while, candle or wax warmers. Those are things that we can't allow in the residence halls. When you take a 12 by 12 space and then 2 students and everything they own and put it all together, generally anything that has an open heating element is not a good idea, because the likelihood that it's going to be too close to something else and possibly start a fire is just too dangerous, and we really want to keep our students and our facilities as safe as possible. Weapons is pretty self-explanatory. Most college campuses, most public places do not allow weapons. We do not allow weapons in the residence halls. I would say the most common questions we get are around knives, especially in terms of those used for cooking, right? So if it is definitely not a cooking knife and it is a large knife, then it would be considered a weapon against policy. So, you know, the Crocodile Dundee, for those of you who have ever seen those movies, although they are quite old and I'm showing my age, those knives are not necessarily considered, you know, cooking or meal prep knives. But if you have a larger knife because you're cutting an apple, or you've decided you're having steak night every Sunday with your friends, and you have a knife that might be sharp, if you're using it for cooking prep, that's understandable. And those can be used in our community kitchens. They can be used in our apartment style kitchens if someone is cooking. However, even a cooking knife, if used in a way that is not for cooking, would be considered a weapon. You know, so I usually use the example with the RAs of that, you know, if you are cutting an apple, that is a knife used for cooking and meal prep. If you are answering the door wielding a knife or sleep with it under your pillow, at that point it would be considered a weapon. And so we do look at those distinctions and a little bit of use in that. The other piece under weapons are things that might be considered a little bit more play for some of our students. So BB guns, paintball guns, airsoft guns, those are still not allowed on campus. Machetes, fencing foils, all of those types of things are also not allowed on campus. Some of the other pieces that we hear about every now and again, candles. I talked about open heating elements, candles, incense, even for decorative purposes. So even if you cut the wick, even if it's never been burned, we do not allow candles in the residence halls. E-cigarettes or vapes, you can own them, you can't use them in the residence halls. I think Will has that on his list to remind you about as well. We don't allow extension cords or those multi-plug adapters in the residence halls. A multi-plug adapter is different than a power strip, right? So it's one of those you plug directly in and it's got multiple plugins on it, but it doesn't have any sort of switch on it to switch it on and off. And so there's a little bit of a difference in that between that and a power strip. And so we'll look at those as we move forward. No rapid consumption containers. So we're talking about kegs, beer balls, funnels, anything that a student might use to consume any sort of beverage exceptionally quickly. Again, we'll talk more about our alcohol policy here in a bit. We do use our same residence halls year after year. We do have some new construction coming online this year that we're excited about. One of the important pieces is that we need to not have nails, screws, or anything else placed into the walls. Otherwise, year after year, these get more and more difficult to patch and paint and take care of. So you can't use them, so please don't bring them. Included in that open heat source piece is slow cookers and pressure cookers. People are like, but you can plug them in and leave them in for hours and they're not really too hot to touch. If you look at some of the pieces on those should have about a 5-foot radius around them in order to be used and left on and left unattended. And if you, again, think about that 12 by 12 residence hall and everybody's belongings in there, typically that amount of space is not going to be available in order to use those. Pets. We do get this question a lot. Again, you know, when we look at training our staff and talking to students, really the question that it comes down to is it a fish? If the answer is no, then it is not allowed. So we get a lot of questions about, well, it's a hamster and it lives in an aquarium, or it's a turtle and it spends most of its time underwater, or it's a lizard and it spends most of its time underwater. If the answer to the question, is it a fish, is no, then it is not allowed in the residence halls. And when it comes to fish, we do allow up to a 10-gallon tank. So you can even have multiple fish, but you can only have fish. Now, that is our pet policy. We do work very closely with the Office of Disability Resources. So for students who have a service animal or an emotional support animal, and they are planning to bring that to campus, please be sure to go through the accommodation process and documentation process with the Office of Disability Resources, and they will let us know if and when that animal is permitted on campus. Typically, those accommodations are made for our residents and those who are living with us. So If another person has an ESA or an emotional support animal and they are coming to visit you, typically that animal would not be allowed in the residence halls with them. If it is a service animal, then obviously there are different laws that govern that. And so if someone has a service animal, then obviously we will work with that student to make sure their needs are being met. The other things, some brief things to talk about, wireless routers. All of our residence halls have wireless. If you bring your own router, you have messed up everybody's wireless around you. And so typically students police this one themselves pretty well, because if they go a few days and realize their wireless is being pretty wonky, they're gonna realize that someone near them has their own router and has it turned on. And so we do work with IT sometimes to try to figure out where those are and narrow them down so that we can have them removed from the halls, because they will mess up wireless for everyone around you. So please make sure not to bring those with you to campus. The last piece I want to cover really quickly is that we do have some policies, again, that we'll talk about in terms of, you know, fire policies and what you can have to decorate and not. One of the big pieces that we have on there, we have a lot of students who love decorative lights, fairy lights, if you want to call them, holiday lights, some people call them, you know, of all different sizes, colors, twinkle ability. And one of their favorite things to do is to wrap them around their beds, especially if the bed is lofted, and create this little hanging oasis in their room. And that sounds pretty and it looks pretty. Now, if we step back and think about it, though, we are going to take a string of lights that are on an electric cord, wrap it around a metal-based bed frame, plug it into an electrical socket, and climb up there and sleep. When you put it in those terms, it really does sound like a bad idea. And so we do have a policy out there that says decorative lights and electric type items cannot be anchored to or touch metal items, including our window and door frames, as well as our beds. So as we sort of start to transition to some of those behavioral type pieces, I'm going to turn it over to Will, because he has the opportunity to work with students and help them correct some of their behaviors in the residence halls on a regular basis. So he is very well versed in this area. So Dr. Sheppard.
Hey, thank you, Alicia. We're going to be talking about student behavior, and this is going to look at the policies and regulations of safety and security in the residence halls. We also will be touching on some things that will be related to COVID-19 as potential policies going forward. First, let's talk about drugs. Basically, we want students to abide by the drug policy. If it's not a prescribed drug that you take, please, it's not going to be allowed in the hall. So that can pertain to anything you can think of that would be called an illicit drug. Alcohol, you must be 21 years of age or older to be permitted to have alcohol in the halls. Now, when you're 21, you only can have a certain amount of alcohol with you in the residence halls. This can be a 70 milliliters of bottles of wine or liquor. You cannot have large quantities, so no keggers. Also, open containers in public areas are prohibited. So this means the hallways, sidewalks, bathrooms, lobbies, you name it, they're not permitted. Okay? Also, make sure you're not distributing to any minors that are not of age in any way. Also, app is a smoke-free living environment. So as Dr. Alicia talked about smoking in the halls and vaping, it is prohibited in the halls. This also goes for hookahs and the electronic cigarettes also. Okay, let's talk about guests. So residents are responsible to abide by the guest policy. All right, you want to talk with your roommate if you have a guest, if it's okay for them to visit. Residents will be held responsible for their behavior of their guests and all activities that happen in the residence halls and the person in that assigned room. So basically make sure your guests are abiding by all the rules of the residence halls. Guests are permitted if the residents of the room agree to having the guests. It's the second time I've said that, so you know it must be important. Make sure everybody is agreeable to having guests over. Guests can have up to one guest that is on campus. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Again, residents are responsible for the behavior and actions of their guests, and this is if they're even unescorted. They must be with the person that they're to see at all times. And this is when they enter the building, at the front door, and exiting the building. Unattended guests may be asked to leave the halls and refer to disciplinary action. So we just ask everybody follows the guest policy. Guests, regardless of all age, may not bring alcohol in the residence halls. And so if they're 21 or above, they still cannot bring alcohol in the hall. Guests of opposite genders may only use the bathrooms designated for their gender, and residents are responsible for any acts or activities that are placed in the residence halls. They're placed in the residence halls. To continue with guests cannot remain in the hall no more than 4 consecutive nights or 10 days per semester with permission from the roommates. Exceeding that limit could be sent to disciplinary action. And if you have any issues with this, call your RA and they can help with this. This year, we anticipate limiting guests, as what I referred to earlier, who do not live in the residence halls from entering our halls. So we'll likely limit the number of guests allowed in the student room at any given time to 1 per resident. And yes, you heard that right. If they are not, if they're off campus, they cannot visit. They must have people that live on campus that can come visit them in the residence hall, and 1 person per resident. So a total of 4 people can be in the room at a time. Quiet hours. Quiet hours are from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and midnight, 10 a.m. Friday through Saturday. But overall, just make sure you're being courteous to your guests and others in the community. Be cognizant of playing radios in the hallways at any time, in the bathrooms or any other areas. So again, be considerate of the needs and respect of others in the halls, and make sure that you're not disrupting the academic success of others. All right, continuing on. Let's talk about elevators. I don't know about you, but I do not like walking up 9 flights of stairs. So with that, let's all say we will not jump in the elevators. This will cause them to break. Also, please do not try to pry them open when they are closed or in motion. This is a very costly mistake for people. So please make sure you do not do this, and make sure you respect the equipment. And again, do not jump or pry open the elevators. Okay, let me see. Furniture. And so we're going to talk about furnishing and safety also. So furnishing. Direct access to doors and windows cannot be obstructed by any furniture in the room. We want to make sure if there's an emergency, everybody can get out of the rooms as quickly and safely as possible. Objects may not be attached to the ceiling, the sprinkler pipes, or the sprinkler heads. Again, if anything breaks those little pieces of glass in those sprinklers, it can cause a lot of damage, and you do not want that. Students may not bunk or unbunk or loft their beds. Lofting or bunking of beds is to be done by only university housing staff. Make sure you put in requests to do this. This is just to make sure it's done correctly as the process is going on. So we do have furniture in the common areas of residence halls so students can relax, socialize, and get to know each other. But we would love to make sure that the furniture is stayed in the common areas. So please do not take furniture from the common areas, the lounges, or the study rooms and place them in your personal room for your enjoyment. Those are there for everybody to enjoy. Student who have issues with room keys. Every student is issued a room key at the time of occupancy at no charge. If that key is lost or stolen, the key will be, key replacement will be billed to your student account, and you will be given another key. So it is up to you, responsibility of the student, to make sure you keep up with your key. If you are going to be leaving the university at any time, whether this is you're leaving because of whatever reason, make sure that you turn in your key the right, proper way. Failure to return the key to the proper person or office can relate to a draw with a charge. Universe will also issue you an identification card when you enroll. You should keep this ID on you at all times. This will give you access to residence halls, and do not loan this out to other students. This will give you access, like I said, to residence halls, into meals and other things that you deem necessary on campus. Airflow. For the HVAC units that we have in the rooms, please make sure that nothing is obstructing these units. Make sure that it is, and anything is in front must be at least 24 inches away from it. This way that the heating and cooling can ventilate the rooms and circulation of the air. This is very important. Let's talk a little bit about housekeeping. We do not have a staff that will clean your room. It is up to you, students, so make sure that you respect the space that you're living in and maintain a clean environment with your roommates if you have one. So we had talked about extension cords and multiple adapters. So this will go in this category for surge protectors. The use of multi-outlet extensions in the residence halls limited to only the UL approved surge protectors with no more than 6 outlets, a heavy-duty cord, and 6 amp rating with attached circuit breaker. So again, it must have a circuit breaker and no more of 6 outlets. The students are responsible for the loss and damage of any furnishing or equipment in the residence halls. Students will be billed if anything is needed to be repaired or replaced, lost or damaged. Again, with decorations and postings, in the hallways and in the common areas must not exceed 10% of any individual wall. Residents may not decorate or cover more than 5%, that's 1 square foot of any individual door. So during holidays or special occasions, make sure that you do not exceed that 5% rule putting up any type of decorations. Microwaves and refrigerators. Yes, it would be nice if everybody could get their own microwave and refrigerator, but unfortunately, it is only 1 per room. Yes, 1 per room. Make sure that the microwave does not exceed the 1200 watts or 10 amps, and the small refrigerator does not exceed the 1200 watts or 10 amps, and 5 cubic feet or less. Again, 1 per room. Students are also responsible for contributing to the safety and security of the residence halls. And this is our #1 concern, make sure that all our students are safe. So make sure that room doors at any time they leave, the room doors at night are locked. Or when you go out your door, it's probably good for you to lock that door, especially during the daytime you're in class or when you're sleeping at night. Utilizing the ID to enter the residence halls and allowing themselves and guests to enter the room is allowed, but letting unknown people into the residence halls by tailgating is not. You never know who that person is or what they're there for, so make sure you do not let anybody tailgate. All right, we're going to continue with some fire safety. Students are required to vacate the residence halls if there is a fire alarm activated during any emergency. Do not stay in your room. Whether you think it's a drill or not, you should leave. No objects can be hung around the top 2 feet of the walls in the residence halls, and no objects can be hung from the ceiling. Also, over occupancy of residence halls is prohibited. Each student assigned to the residence halls must have a maximum of one guest um, occupancy and residence halls in the room or the suite or the apartment. Again, just one guest. All outdoor, indoor sport activities are prohibited in the residence halls, including throwing frisbees, inline skating, scooters, skateboards, hacky sack, golf, putting, you name it, it is not allowed. Again, sprinkler heads for student safety. That's for if there's an actual fire, the fire can be put out quickly. They are not to be used to be hung any type of decorative lights, hangers, or anything. Again, if anything breaks the glass in those sprinklers, there could be a lot of water damage in the halls. And guess who could be financially responsible if the person who did it is found responsible? Okay. Alicia, am I missing anything else?
I don't think so. I think, you know, our biggest pieces here is that students living in community, for many, it's new to live with so many other people. So the policies that we've talked about today really aren't about telling you no because we enjoy telling students no. It's really about, you know, community and facility safety and making sure that our students and our facilities stay well maintained and safe. So if you have a question about why a policy might be in place, please let us know. We're happy to answer in terms of some of the whys, because sometimes it helps you feel a little bit better about why we're asking you to do something or not to do something. Other than that, you know, all these policies are listed on our website. As we do create changes to policies at the university level, as we prepare for fall during COVID-19, we will let you know what changes might be coming about, including the possibility of limiting the number of guests or guests from different places in our residence halls, other requirements the university might have in and around COVID-19. We will make sure you are aware of those prior to move-in day to the best of our ability. We know that that's constantly changing right now, and we're doing our best to keep up and communicate to you what we have in that. And we've also already posted our move-in information and move-in page. So I think those are the only other things I would add. You want to close this out?
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for your time, and we are ready to see you in the fall, and we hope you are ready also. Again, as Dr. Alicia said, please reach out to us if you have any additional questions about our policies. Have a great day.
We'll see you soon.